Hey, you're listening to the Holistic Travel Nurse podcast. This episode is a conversation with a pediatrician, a doctor, a health coach, lives in Europe, so you love her little accent. And we talk about healthy habits and making healthy habits simple, because if we can make a healthy habit simple, then life is easier. If we have unhealthy habits that maybe you just don't know you don't have, and maybe also when you want to talk about how to take care of your children and how do you want to instill healthy habits to your children, this is a great conversation where you need to listen through. Do us a favor and give me a review on iTunes. More people will hear it, or on Spotify, wherever you're listening to this podcast. It will help the algorithm and more people hear it. We look forward, either one of us, to reaching out to us. All that will be in the show notes. You can just click my email, and if you want to talk to Dr. Orlena, or if you want to talk to me, we both look forward to chatting with you personally. That is what we want to do. We want to make sure that you have little tips to making a healthy habits in your life and healthy choices. And in the long run, that really affects your overall health. So this is that kind of conversation. Thank you, Dr. Orlena, for being on the podcast, and I hope you guys enjoy this conversation. This is the podcasting, and it's Naomi. And pronounce your first and last name for me.
Dr. Orlena Kerek.
Okay, I want to pronounce. Say that last name again.
Kerek.
Kerek. Okay, see, I wouldn't have pronounced it correctly. And your background, and I'll tell you my background.
Yeah, so I am from the UK, as you can tell from my accent, and I trained as a pediatric doctor. So in the UK, I was working in a hospital, and then 9 years ago, we moved to Spain. And then, to cut a very long story short, that was basically when I gave up clinical medicine, and I moved online and started working with picky eaters. So children who were picky eaters, partly because I had my own picky eaters, but also that tied in with healthy eating for kids. And now I work with mothers to help them to lead a healthy lifestyle, and some of them want to lose weight, but really it's about making healthy habits for the whole family, so the whole family can be healthy and, most importantly, feel fit and fabulous.
Awesome. My background is quite different. As my journey into the healthcare community was, I actually, when I was a child, I wanted to be an FBI agent. And I had that curiosity and exploratory, maybe I read too many Nancy Drew books when I was a kid. That will definitely show and date me there. And anyways, I went into college and wanted to be an accountant in business, and I worked that for a while, and I actually had one kid with health issues, and that's what struck me into nursing, was my own child. So hats off to pediatricians. We saw many of them with my own kid. And what dove me into more of the holistic and natural approach of it is that there was so much information that I was not taught in nursing school or any pre-med school, all the stuff you have to go before you even get into nursing school, or then by any physicians really dealing with my own kids' health. And what led me and my eyes opened is that no one talked about, like you said, healthy habits and certain things that we could be doing. Like, my kid was severely asthmatic, and yes, they tested her for all this stuff, but they didn't talk about the toxins that we had in our house, such as perfumes, which are that she was reacting to. No one talked about that. I had to find that all on my own. So it was that goal in my health and my own family's health that really took me to a holistic and more of a natural approach to our health. I think the UK, I think you guys have a little bit more of a different viewpoint than just because of the way that healthcare is set up there than we have here in the US.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the UK, ideally, doctors, I always think about prevention. Prevention is better than cure. And so what I'm trying to teach people, or I'm busy teaching people, is that when you can lead a healthy life, you can feel fit and fabulous, but all of these habits, they're really easy. As we talked about, you just swap things around, and the idea is that you create your amazing life. I think the reality is in the UK is that doctors do know this, and they're promoting these healthy habits, but partly they're very, very busy dealing with their sick patients, so they just don't have time to be teaching people. And partly, a lot of people actually just want a pill. They don't want to make changes. They don't want to listen. So, it's difficult. And ideally, I think it does need a rejuggle. And I think it's really important that we have these conversations, and that there are so many people who are now advocating healthy ways of living, so people can, create their own healthy way of living. And we know roughly what a healthy way of living is. Most people know roughly what it is. We can talk about the nitty gritty, and we can talk about this one thing being better than that, but we know the way we eat. So I talk about the 4 pillars: the way we eat, the way we exercise, sleeping, and emotional wellness. Those are the 4 pillars. And we know that we need to look after all of those. We know sleep is important. You know that if you don't have enough sleep, you wake up grumpy in the morning. And when you wake up grumpy in the morning, you're more likely to eat more, and you're more likely to be stressed and shout at your kids. It's not rocket science. A lot of it isn't rocket science. But yeah, a lot of people have resistance to it. And I want to show them how easy and fun it is.
Absolutely. I do. I think that simple switches, that's how it's done. I mean, simple switches in your life is then you have the progression in your health. And I think people get caught up in the busy lifestyle that they almost forget, and they don't do any self-evaluation, that they don't think that they're, well, this is the way my parents did it, so this is the way I'm doing it. And there's no thought process. Well, this is just the way it is. I have 4 teaspoons of sugar in my coffee because that's just what I watched, mom and pop do.
It's so true. It is so true, though. And that's one of the reasons why I changed from working with picky eaters to working with parents. Because, picky eating, in my mind, is all about healthy eating and teaching our kids to eat healthily. The problem I was seeing was that a lot of parents saw this problem as picky eating, and they wanted their children to eat healthily, but they didn't want to eat healthily themselves. And the best way you teach kids is just to demonstrate and make it habit and normal. And then, as you say, those kids will go on and do the same. I have a really funny story that my husband tells, that his mother, when she had, when he was a young kid, and she would make a joint of lamb, and she would have the joint of lamb, and she would cut the end bit off, and she would roast it. And my husband, who was obviously then a child, said, well, why do you cut the end bit off? And she said, oh, I don't know. That's why your grandmother did it. Let's ask your grandmother. And so when they asked the grandmother, she said, well, my oven was small and I couldn't fit it in if I didn't do that. But it's just, a classic example of how we do things because that's the way they've always been done without thinking about them. And it's exactly the same with healthy eating and healthy living and just these routines and habits that we have.
Yeah. What are some of the top habits that you work on somebody? What are some simple habits that you find that most people don't take the time for?
Well, I think healthy eating is one of the really, really big ones. And people have this idea that healthy eating is going to be expensive and complicated, and that their children aren't going to like it, and that they have to do different meals for one child likes this, and I want to lose weight, so I have to eat in this different way. And I just say no to all of that. And I think healthy eating is, in a nutshell, it's about eating vegetables. I can go into a lot more detail about healthy eating, but really and truly, it's about eating lots of vegetables, which are really easy to cook, because if you buy good vegetables, then, you just cook them up, throw them in the oven with some olive oil. So, you want to increase your vegetables and you want to decrease your packaged processed food. And there's different grades of processed foods. Of course there is, but the more processed it is, well, firstly, they add all kinds of random things to packet food. But even if you get food that is, simple processed food like bread or pasta or flour even, there has been a certain amount of processing that has gone on that normally we would do ourselves. So take, for example, nuts. I live in Spain, and in a few months' time, all the almond trees around here will start having nuts, and I can go round and I can pick up the almonds and I can take them home and I can shell the almonds. And, that takes a reasonable amount of time. And if I wanted to take those almonds and make them into a cake, I would have to spend a long period of time cracking the nuts and then, grinding them to make them into almond flour and then bake a cake with it. But now we have we can just go and buy packaged almonds. We can eat a handful of almonds really easily. We can buy almond flour and they've already done that grinding for us, or we've got a machine that will do it super quickly for us. So, one of the things is that work should be done by our body. When we start chewing things, that's when the digestive process starts. And it's much better that we do it than, a factory does it. So, less packaged food on whatever grade you're looking at, and more fruit and vegetables. And it's super easy and super simple. And I promise you, your kids will eat it. The issue with kids not eating it is that, if you give your children a lot of processed foods, well, there's different reasons why, but often it contains sugar and salt, and so their taste buds get used to sugar and salt. And if you give your kids lots of sugar and salt and then give them some strawberries, they'll be like, what's this thing? I don't know if you've ever done this, but if you eat a piece of chocolate and then eat a strawberry, the strawberry has no taste because the sugar in the chocolate is so overpowering. If you wash your mouth out and then try the strawberry, you'll be able to taste it, or the fruit, or whatever it is. So once you really address how you eat as a family, actually your children will eat fruit and vegetables. It's not that inherently, there are picky children, totally, there are picky children, but my children are picky and they eat fruit and vegetables. And, those are some of their safe, accepted foods. So children will eat them if they are used to them and if they are presented frequently. So that's I think, the big thing. That's, looking at how we eat. And then other habits are exercise, sleep. Sleep is super, super important. And so many parents so many people don't prioritize sleep. And even people who know that sleep is really good for them, they don't prioritize sleep. But, sleep is, it helps us fix ourselves. It helps us be productive. It helps with so many things. And it's really important. It's connected to illnesses like Alzheimer's disease. Lack of sleep is connected to lots of illnesses. So it's super important to get your 8 hours sleep. And when you do get your 8 hours sleep, okay, with young kids, you might have problems, but generally it's possible to get 8 hours sleep. You're going to feel so much better. And, then you can turn up being the person you want to be, and your kids will benefit, everyone around you will benefit. Just a really simple thing to do.
Yeah, I agree. I think that sleep is, should make it priority. And I know too many people that are on dependent sleep medications, and maybe they need to change some lifestyle things. Maybe look at their caffeine, they're decreasing their stress and doing things to get a sleep routine,
Yeah, definitely. And the problem with a lot of the medications is that they don't give you a good quality of sleep. So it's really worth looking at, sleep hygiene. So as you say, caffeine, not drinking alcohol late at night. There's lots of things that you can do. For example, going out in the morning and getting some fresh air, a little bit of exercise. But what I see when you start doing all of these things, and the last pillar is what I call emotional wellness. So how we think about things, our emotions, taking some time to be mindful, however that looks for you. So it's different for different people. And when we start doing all of these things, we spiral up. It feels like it's just a small change that you're making, but you might think, okay, I'm going to prioritize sleep. So I'm going to go for a 20-minute walk in the morning. But actually you're giving yourself some exercise then. So you're actually doing two things. And so you're going to sleep better. You're going to feel a bit better because you're doing that exercise. And, you just spiral up and spiral up. And as you start making these changes, you feel inspired to make more and more changes. So you see, oh, look, I've made this change and now this is a habit and I do it without thinking. And then you make another one and you make another one. Now the reverse is also true, that it's very easy to spiral down that negative plug hole and think, oh my goodness, I can't do any of this. But you just have to take each little step, one step at a time. How do we, climb a mountain? We climb a mountain one small step at a time. And I think that's where we just have to keep going.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there are way too many people that don't see their habits and accumulate them to their health. I don't think that the connect the dots to what their health is like. It's they don't put the thought process necessarily with the food that they will choose. It's more, it's, not prioritizing your health, not prioritizing how you shop. and reading labels. I will be in the store and I will read labels and I'm like, oh, they're trying, and they're so good with marketing and labeling for food that you think it's healthy when it's really a non-healthy-ish
Yeah.
package with way too much sugar. Or I was listening, I'm listening to a book and they were talking about some of those artificial chemicals and the messages they leave in your brain, and they hijack your brain. And so food, and you didn't think of like, and when you make the switch, it takes over time, and then you almost don't even crave the thing you used to crave all the time. I mean, oh my gosh, I used to love chips. I still think chips are great, but I mean, they are so addicting. It's like they you can't just eat one. You want to eat the whole entire bag, and it's like nothing in there that is going to be nourishing to your body. So, and like you couldn't eat like the whole bag of almonds, like you said. You just can't eat that many. Like,
Yeah, well, cravings are a really interesting topic, actually. So if you think about habits and cravings, so habits are really interesting, and the two of them are connected. Cravings are kind of habits gone a little bit wrong. So the way our bodies work is we like to be efficient, and we have dopamine receptors. So I'm sure you've heard of dopamine. Dopamine is that hormone or this neurotransmitter that gives us that sort of urge to go out and do something. And so when we do something, we get a little bit of a boost of a dopamine receptor, and we think, oh, that's good. I want to get that dopamine hit again. I want to get that dopamine hit again. And our body likes to do things in the most efficient way. Like, think about this. Think about when you create a new recipe, when you follow a new recipe and you have to follow the recipe, you have to think about it. Your brain is almost working in first or second gear. When you know a recipe to cook, you just do it automatically. Or driving to work, you drive to work automatically. But if you have to take a new route, your brain has to slow down and try and figure it out. So we like habits. They're good because they are efficient. However, we often end up with habits that, create what we call bad habits. But, they are serving us in that they're giving us the dopamine, but they're not serving us in that they may be a bad habit. So I recommend people often do what I call a habit audit, where you take a step back and you look at your habits and think, this habit serves me and I want to change this habit. Now, if you go on and look at cravings often are carbohydrate cravings. And what happens to those carbohydrates is different people have cravings for different things. So it might be donuts, it might be cakes, it might be bread, it might be pasta, it might be potato chips. But what's the common thread of all of those is they give you a quick release of glucose. And that glucose, you're getting a quick release of glucose, and that glucose is then giving you a dopamine hit. Mm-hmm. And so what you're really doing is you're kind of emotionally connected to that food. It's not about hunger, because if it's hunger, you'll eat anything. I always say to my kids, there's no such thing as only hungry for chocolate. If you're actually genuinely hungry, you will eat, whatever's on offer, cucumber, carrot sticks, apple, if you actually are hungry. But if it's only for one thing, then it's a craving. Now, if you take a step back and you go, okay, I'm going to cut out all of these quick release carbohydrates and I'm going to eat, so vegetables are carbohydrates, but they are released into your blood system more slowly. And I'm going to eat more of these natural healthy things that are wrapped up in fiber and reduce, the peak of going up, the glucose is much, much slower. You will find that naturally those carbohydrate cravings disappear, because your body sort of isn't looking, it's not seeking that quick release glucose. And a step beyond that is that actually our bodies are perfectly capable of finding their own glucose. We have stores all over our body. The most well-known is fat. And we have energy stores all over our body. And a lot of people get into this habit of thinking, oh my goodness, I'm hungry, I have to eat. Oh my goodness, I'm hungry, I have to eat. And what they're looking for is an external source of glucose. Whereas actually what happens when you're hungry and you don't eat, your body goes, you're not going to eat anything. I better go and sort this issue out myself. And it goes and it looks for a store of glucose to start breaking down. Mm-hmm. And once your body can do that, it kind of gets used to it and it doesn't worry. But when you're constantly looking for that glucose hit, you're overriding, you're not allowing your body to do that. And that's when you get into this, like, I have to eat this, carbohydrate craving, or I have to eat some food quite frequently.
Yeah. That's exactly what I was reading. That's exactly what I was reading about the the neurological and the science part of that in the brain, which is really fascinating to me. It's very fascinating to me because I actually feel better fasting than I do when I eat. So, like yesterday, I only did liquids for, I didn't eat until I get home. So, I don't know. I was over 16 hours and I felt amazing. And I feel better, especially if I'm going to go do something where it takes a lot of mental stamina or there's a lot of thought process to it. This is mine. My body must have a lot of storage that I feel better fasted. Or
I think that's actually quite common. I've done fasting before, and I think once you get used to it, once your body realizes that it can access this, you actually feel quite alert and you feel like you've got a lot of energy. And it kind of makes sense from an evolution point of view, because if you're not eating, your body's sort of getting ready to go and eat. But equally, the reverse is true. Like, we know after a big meal, we often feel sluggish and tired, and we want to sit and relax and let our body digest that food. It's just that now we eat more frequently. Interestingly, I was reading The Diet Myth. It's a really interesting book by an English professor called Tim Spector. And he was saying that, back in the day, in the past, people only ate once a day. And
yep.
that's perfectly fine. It doesn't matter how often we eat. We don't have to eat 4 or 5 times a day. It's just culturally, that's what we do now. Now, it doesn't really matter. It is interesting because it affects your insulin and your glucose. But
yeah,
whether you eat 2 or 3, it doesn't matter. But I think what's important is to have a routine and allow your body to get used to the way that you eat and find what works for you. But yeah, 1 time a day, 2 times a day. So different people who do intermittent fasting, some of them will eat, a big meal. So they're eating all of their calories that they need in 24 hours in 1 meal or in 2 meals. Or, normally we spread it out. And I think the sort of average norm is 4 or 5 with snacks in between. And there isn't any real reason why we have to eat that frequently.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel so much better that way. I also, I have this whole habit of, there's so many like good habits that I've like made over time that I adjust. And you know, also like when it comes to sleep, I had the sleep ninja on my podcast and we talked about, she did the whole research when it comes to when you should last have your meal when it comes to actually sleeping and how you will sleep better if you wait a few hours before you need to have that window of no eating before so many windows of not eating before you go to bed. And so same thing with that when it comes to sleep. It was fascinating. And we talked about, you could make intentional turning your phone to, there's a new setting on there where you can turn off the LED lighting and turn it to another lighting. So it's easier for you to sleep at night. There are all those little things that you can like literally do for your brain to wind down and sleep. If you're one of those people that lay down and you just can't make your brain shut off, those are some of the little things that I found that I do. And then the same thing with, get a morning routine. I think that if you have a good morning routine, the rest of your day goes better. I think if you have some kind of morning routine, if you are an exerciser in the morning, that's fine. If you're like bright up, get up and exercise, that's fine. Or you want to get up and have a slow cup of tea, or you're a coffee drinker, I'm not anti-coffee, and you have a quiet time. But I think if you have an intentional morning, the rest of your day goes better too, and you can prioritize your day, even if you do the same kind of work every day. I think a simple routine in the morning, that's what I find. I feel the rest of the day goes better.
Yeah, set yourself up for a good, an intentional moment, and set yourself up for the rest of the day.
Yeah, I have friends that will do, they're just total exercisers in the morning. I'm like, I don't want to get up right away and do exercise. I don't. I like my yoga class earlier in the morning, but not at like 5 a.m. But I like, even if it's just like 20 minutes, especially the parents, if you can get up before your kids get up, that way you have that little bit of time before they get up and get in your face. It's nicer than them waking you up. Hey, mom.
I guess that depends on what time your kids wake up, because some children wake up very early and some will sleep better. I'm quite lucky that my children sleep in reasonably late. But I do have friends and their children get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. So I would personally put them back to sleep, but there you go.
I know, I do. I have actually both. I have both children that do both the same thing. And I remember, you know, one of them I didn't have to worry about getting her up for school. The other one I was like, she needs night school. This is ridiculously torture for me to get her out of the bed in the morning. She is not a morning person, not a morning person. And so you just already see that she's not that kind of person. I mean, I'm like, I had to threaten to dump water on her to get her out of bed. I was like, I'm that mom that was trying to drag her out of the bed. So
it is true. There are some people who are early birds, and there are other people who are night owls. And you know, it is a bit unfair on people who are night owls because society is definitely set up for the early birds. I think the early birds are in the majority, but yeah, it's tough if you're a night owl.
Yeah, it is. So this has been a good conversation. We talked about like simple changes in our and making intentional shopping, like making the list. I'm better at, I wander in my store. My husband is like, this is on my list, this is all I'm getting, and that's all I'm getting at the store. Men, I don't know why men are so good at like, this is the list my wife gave me, that's what I'm getting. Me, I'm like, oh no, I think I want that. But if we do that intentionally and we start making intentional changes with our habits, with our eating, it like, and being more intentional to the quality of the food that we're feeding our bodies, that's, you know, I have something about the kids I have to tell you, because my kids are actually I have two of them that become vegetarians. And I swear it's nothing me, actually. This one kid would just, she used to, now she's in college, but she would tell me, Mom, there's no food in the house. There wasn't fruit and vegetables. I'm telling you, if that got low in the house, she would just almost freak. I mean, she asked for an edible arrangement instead of a birthday cake one year, which is pretty.
Sounds amazing. You are very lucky, or you're either very lucky or you did all the right things. So you need to congratulate yourself.
Oh, I don't know if I did the right. I mean, I would just always make it a habit to have those things available. If that was a snack for them, then, you know, carrots or apples or something that every single day. I mean, this kid got.
You did all the right things. You did all the right things, it sounds like.
Oh, I hope so. I mean, to this day, I think that they're actually all pretty healthy eaters. I mean, so I took my son who's 22 and we went to the grocery store and I just let him actually do the shopping this time. And I was so impressed. And that was like the proud moment that I'm like, oh my gosh, he's 22, you know, where they're just living by themselves and they could eat whatever. And he's buying all this healthier stuff. And I'm like, I'm so impressed. I'm so impressed.
That is amazing. And you know what? There was a study recently as well that looked at college students who could cook and couldn't cook, and it followed them up over 10 years. And actually, the ones that could cook, they end up, you know, when they have families and children, obviously cooking for their children, and it passes on. So it's not just that you've impacted your children, but you've also impacted your grandchildren, and that will just follow on. And this is what I mean by healthy habits just being so easy. Like, I'm sure you didn't feel at the time, oh my goodness, this is so difficult. And I'm sure they didn't grow up thinking, oh, we eat healthily. They just think, oh, we eat normally, but they can't see the difference. And so once it's habit, it's just easy and you do it without thinking.
Yeah, my kid was like, she doesn't, I swear she probably does an apple every day. Obsessively an apple every day. I think she took the doctor keep an apple every day and the doctor way. Literally. I'm like not joking, that when she got braces, I was like, I don't know if you're going to be able to eat your apple, honey. She's like, no, I'm going to cut it. I'm going to cut it in slices so I can take it. I won't be able to eat it the way I normally do with my braces, but I'm going to get my apple in. I mean, it was like, it's impressive. And so if you could do that to like adding some healthier food and then making it, you know, like you said, if you mix it the right way, I used to make egg rolls. And handmade egg rolls, and I would cook them in good, you know, butter, coconut oil, olive oil when I would cook them. But most of mine were filled with vegetables and vegetables that they would never try before. So then if it was mixed in with the egg roll and spices, they had no idea of this vegetable that they always would. If I just served it by itself, they would say no to. So I always found creative ways.
It takes them a while to get used to vegetables. They do have I think, a resistance. I call it resistance to green things. But if you keep presenting it and keep presenting it, they do learn to like them. A lot of it is in their mind. You know, there are some children who do have genuine dislikes. So I have a child who, he's now 12, and he used to love bananas when he was little, and now he genuinely doesn't like bananas. He can smell them a mile off and he won't touch them. A lot of what they say they dislike is really just new foods that they're scared of, or they have this preconceived idea of something. So for example, my children say they don't like mushrooms because they don't like the texture of it. But actually, they often eat mushrooms, not without realizing it, but you know, sometimes they will eat mushrooms and it's not really the texture. I think it's just this idea of them not liking it. And it just takes time. It takes time and patience. And one thing I would say to parents is, don't push your kids to try things. You know, once you start really pushing, you're just going to end up with a battle on your hands. That doesn't mean just allow them to eat cake the whole time. That wasn't what I said. But what I did say was, you know, don't push them. Don't create issues around it, because you're never going to win that battle.
Yeah, I remember I had the opposite with my parents. I mean, I was the picky eater as a child. And I remember like they would sit, and I didn't want to eat a large portion either. And they would put this in front of me, and I would sit the dinner table because they expected me to clean my plate as a kid. And that is so unhealthy. And it's a mindset that I think it's passed down, that you have to finish everything on your plate. And it was something I realized in my 30s I had to let go of. Took that many years that was ingrained in me, that I had to finish everything on my plate.
Yeah. It is easy to teach our children bad habits as well. And so another one that I see very commonly, which I really urge people to think about and to not to do, is rewarding behavior with food. So for example, I used to do this before I was aware of it. My youngest son, when he was a baby and he didn't want to get in his car seat, I would give him a biscuit or a cookie, and suddenly it would be fine. But what you're doing there is, whether it's a good behavior, rewarding them, or saying, oh, you've been naughty, so you can't have that ice cream or that treat, is you're creating a connection between food and emotions. And we don't eat, like, okay, we do eat food for emotions when it's a big party or something like that, a celebration. But generally, the reason to eat food is to fuel our body. And we need to keep that as our primary reason rather than for enjoyment, and find enjoyment in other areas, which isn't food.
Yeah, I agree. And then now we've almost glamorized some food with some of the incredible, crazy TV shows around exotic food. So yeah, it's a good conversation. And I wish that there was more conversations where people could, you know, do some self-evaluation of your habits, and see little things that you could start, little teeny areas you could start to move the needle in your life and your kids, especially if you're a parent, because they're watching everything you do. And you're an example by what you eat and do and your habits that you're doing, good or bad. They're like being passed down. And so that's the same thing I think in our lives. We have those little habits, in, you know, being intentional with what we do to make those better shifted habits, a sleep habit or a healthy eating habit, or you are trying to get out of caffeine. You can do it slowly if you've been addicted, because I mean, it's an addiction. I don't know about in the UK, but in the US, I mean, people are on energy drinks and caffeine. They're in the healthcare and the hospital setting, I mean, come on, everybody is on caffeine. The residents that are working way too many hours, the nurses that are working way too many hours, they are running off of some kind of false energy in caffeine and not working on great nutrient dense food.
Yes, so, and probably working too many hours and not getting enough sleep.
That's the nature of the beast in healthcare, though.
But isn't that sad, though? Because, you know, healthcare should be about looking after ourselves, and the people that we should be looking after includes all those healthcare workers.
Yeah, I agree, especially right now that we should be doing more. Like today, they try to get me to work. Speaking of, they try to get me to work today, and I said no. I said I have always make plans on my day off, and I prioritize that. They actually give me, because of my specialty, a work phone, and there's all these messages and stuff. And she goes, they can tell when I don't read, and I read them nowadays. And they're like, well, you aren't reading your messages. I said, no, on my day off is my day off. I take priority in self-care. It's so important to me. If I make priority to get to a yoga class, to do something nourishing, to get to a massage, to do something nourishing to my body, I make it priority, because I really think that if self-care and self-love, and that is so darn important to be, especially to be healthier to everybody else. And I'm a better me, a better nurse, a better wife when I prioritize my good self-care.
Absolutely. I 100% agree.
I bet you do that same thing. So I just want to thank you so much. I will put both our stuff in the show notes when it comes to like reaching out to you. And it's really a cool shift that you've made. You've made such a big passion from working with children now to working with moms and families and making a whole family change with people. That's really impressive. And I just want to thank you for, the work that you do is important, because those people don't really get those pillars of health if those are so crucial to your overall health and your overall feeling of joy and feeling of energy and vitality.
Thank you. I hope, that's exactly what I want people to have. And just for them to think of it as normal. This is normal life. My life is amazing and I'm full of energy and I do all of these things, but without thinking about it.
Yeah. I have incorporated it. It takes time to actually get to change a habit that you had that was really bad and that you switch it to something better, I remember when I cut sugar off completely. Oh gosh, it was a detox and a reaction. And but I rarely take cane sugar. And if I get it with fruit, that's the only time of sugar I get in my diet.
Yes, I say get your sugar rush from fruit. That's my motto.
Yeah. And it's totally enough. It takes some time to get there, but when you get there, that apple, or that we have these peaches in right now, and the peaches are just so good, and it tastes so good. I mean, it's like a dessert. So
yes. No, we have peaches here as well, and they are delicious. Exactly. And even just baking apples will bring out the sugar in them. And I often have baked apples, the kids can have them for breakfast, and I tease them and I say, you're having dessert for breakfast. And it's true, they're sweet and they're delicious and they don't need added sugar.
Yeah. I love or fresh berries. I'm going to Oregon in a few months, and the berries there are better than here. So where are you at now? What is the main thing that's grown there that is like
here in Spain? Spain produces lots of fruit and vegetables, so I am very lucky, and I have a beautiful market that I go to, a farmer's market every single day. There's a big one on Sunday, so I go on Sunday and I come back with kilos and kilos of locally produced fruit and vegetables. So right now it's peaches, soft fruits really now, and courgettes, or you call them zucchini, tomatoes. Basil is in season now, so I have a giant basil plant in my back garden, which I absolutely love.
How many languages do you speak? Do you speak more than one language?
I speak 3. I speak English and Catalan and Spanish.
Catalan, what's that?
Catalan is the language that they speak here. So I live in Catalonia, which is a little area. So I'm sure you've heard of Barcelona. Barcelona is the big city in Catalonia, and they actually speak a different language. We speak Spanish as well here, but at schools they speak Catalan. So I speak Catalan because that's the local language, and I speak Spanish because it's the sort of language of Spain. So all of Spain is Spanish. But yes, it's beautiful here. Absolutely beautiful.
Very cool. And I feel like I'm in a different country sometimes when I travel, and just in the US, because languages are all over. I mean, here's a lot of Hispanic, but it's more of a Mexican Spanish than when I was in Florida. That Spanish is Puerto Rican, and it's different twang. I only speak very little of it. But then I also, when I was in New Orleans, there was more French, and I was up, I was in the northern part of the US and Maine. If you're closer to that part and you're closer to Canada and you cross the border, it's more French.
Yeah, but I mean, the States is huge, isn't it? It's like it's the size of a continent. So, you know, we have different countries and you guys have different states. And I guess your states are equivalent to different countries, really.
Oh, Texas is like Texas is like its own little country here where I'm at right now. And I've been in an RV traveling, so I've been all over the U.S. and which is pretty cool to experience the different cultures in the U.S. So,
That sounds interesting.
yeah, and then at farmers markets is one of our favorite things because we just see the local thing of what is. My thing is became a connoisseur of very specialized honey, and I don't have honey that often, but honey from this area is very different from this area and very specialized in different tastes. And same with the fruits and vegetables. I've seen the same thing with the taste. The taste of the peaches here compared to the South Carolina peach. So I love that part of us when we travel and journey. Their food is fun for us because we will experience the cultural differences in each area. And we love the farmers market type of thing where we can see really what is the culture and what's grown around that area. So that's been our fun for the past couple of years. And so another way to get your kids to move out and never have them move back in because they really can't find you. One way to get them to grow up.
Good tip.
You can do that, and I know that there's some people I follow on YouTube that are families that do it in Europe, and they live in an RV and travel Europe. I'm like, well, that's way you get your kids not to move back in. So you can put that out there as advice from listeners.
I would love to travel around Europe a little bit more. Yeah, right now isn't a good time, but in a few years' time, I think when things get back to normal a little bit, I will be traveling a bit more with the children.
Yes. Well, I know it's a big time difference, so I just want to thank you for making this work.
No, thank you. It's fine. It's my evening, so it's lovely to connect.
Well, awesome. And I'm going to hit